Welcome to the question of the day. Today's question is from Henry in Georgia. And Henry asks, I'm a new inside salesperson. Our company has never had an inside salesperson, and we don't know where to begin. Help. Great question. I get this question a lot. And kudos to you guys for deciding, hey, we're going to do an inside salesperson because I talk to a lot of companies that are big enough that they need an inside salesperson and they don't have one. And there's even companies that, like, by the time they figure out that they need an inside salesperson, they actually need a second or a third inside salesperson. And so kudos to you guys for doing the math, looking at your processes, looking at your company and deciding, hey, we need an inside salesperson because this can have a huge impact on your business. It's the inside sales role. And just to clarify, so like in the trades, the inside sales role is the role that's the you're following up the salespeople. And so it's still a sales role, but you're not starting from scratch. You're not calling cold leads or anything like that. You are doing the follow up for the salespeople or the technician or the plumber, the electrician that was in the field. And so you're doing that follow up. And so it's not a role you need when you're a smaller company. When you're a smaller company, everybody's wearing multiple hats and doing multiple things. And so salespeople are doing their own follow up. But as you get bigger, you start to streamline your processes. You start to isolate jobs so that you can be more efficient in scale a larger company. And so when you're bigger, it makes a huge impact. In fact, benchmark would be about 10%. It's going to add about 10% additional revenue to your company. And I see some inside sales that do really well that are capturing 20% or maybe even a little more. And sometimes it's that the inside salesperson is really good and they're capturing 20%. Sometimes it's that the sales team is just really bad and it's really easy to capture 20%. So that happens sometimes too. But general guideline, it's going to add about 10% additional revenue that based on whatever you're bringing in now. I worked with a company a couple of years ago and they told me, man, we got a great inside salesperson. Like she's capturing 20% additional revenue. Well, when I got there and I started working with the sales team, the inside salesperson, she was good. I'm not saying she was bad, but it's just the sales team was so poor. They were leaving a lot on the table. They weren't doing one trip closes. And so there was just a lot left out there that she was closing. And in fact, I worked with the team and we actually increased their closing percentage by like 30-40%. And then I got a call from her about 2-3 months later and she was like, Chris, my numbers are down. Like I am down to 10%. I'm capturing 10% additional revenue. Well, and it wasn't nothing that she was doing wrong. It's just that the sales team got better. They were closing in the field, and so she had less to close after. But an inside salesperson is going to capture about 10% additional because it streamlines what you do best. Salespeople need to be in the field with people. They need to be executing that in-person sales process, working with people. That's what salespeople do best. There's a lot of statistics you can look at. One that I found is when you're doing effective follow-up, 2% of additional sales are going to close on the first follow-up attempt, 3% on the second follow-up attempt, 5% on the third follow-up attempt, 10% on the fourth follow-up attempt, but 80% of follow-up sales are going to occur on the fifth or more follow-up. Now, when you look at that conversely, salespeople aren't following up that much. And I'm included in that. When I was selling, I had to do my own follow-up. I didn't have an inside salesperson. And I'm a rule follower. My boss said follow up, I followed up, right? But what happens is you have that intent of I'm going to follow up with my customers from yesterday, but then you have a new customer. And so that's more important. So you focus on that. You make a sale, right? And then you have another customer after that and another customer after that. And before you know it, it's the end of the day and you didn't get any follow-up done, right? And now that by the second day, those are 2-day-old leads. They're less sexy. And I got another lead coming in. So it's just the nature of the beast. Salespeople generally don't follow up very well. But when you look at statistics like that, where 80% or more of follow-up sales happen on the fifth or more attempt, You need somebody dedicated into that role. That's what allowed you to streamline salespeople in the field. And then I have somebody that's doing those follow-ups to capture those sales, to be able to do five or more follow-ups. Now, there's one thing I want to clarify about the inside sales role. The inside sales role, it's a sales position. Sometimes it's viewed as like a call center position or a phone position because you are using a phone. And there's nothing wrong with call center people. I'm not knocking call center people, but I think we undervalue the sales skills that are needed in an inside sales role. It is a sales role, and I see it work best when it is viewed in a sales capacity and managed by a sales leader, somebody that knows sales, right? It's different skill sets, a call center versus inside sales. Because an inside salesperson, think about it, their job is to get things rolling again. It's a sales process. It's never done. It just stalls. The only time it's done is if they buy somewhere else or you, right? Like that's when it's done. But it just stalled. And so I need somebody that has sales abilities or is capable of learning sales abilities to nudge that forward. Just get the ball rolling again to keep that sales process moving forward. And so for that reason, it's a sales role. In fact, if you think about it, in many ways, it's harder than a regular sales role because you inherited the situation, right? Like I don't know exactly what happened before I wasn't there. Hopefully there's notes, but usually notes aren't very good, right? And so I don't know. I wasn't there. I've never met this person. I have to figure this out on the fly as I'm calling the customer and starting to talk to the customer. And on top of that, I'm not face to face. Like it's not as effective over the phone as face to face. And so it's harder in a lot of sense. And if you inherited a bad situation, like if that salesperson like angered them somehow, like or didn't deliver value, like now you're trying to like dig out of that hole. It's a hard job. And so for that reason, you need sales skills or that ability to learn those sales skills. You also hear no a lot. Like you have to have thick skin because, if you're capturing 10% of unsold revenue, that means 90% of the time you're hearing no. So for every 10 phone calls you're making, you're getting nine no's. And it's easy to say, like, oh, yeah, well, I know that. I can power through that. But when you're in it, when you're in the grind and it's just no, 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 they're not answering. They're not getting back to me. No, no, no. That starts to wear on a person. So you have to be incredibly mentally strong to push through that. Those inside salespeople I talk about, the ones that capture 20%, the ones that do really well, they're mentally strong. In fact, one of them that I talked to, I love his outlook on it. He said as he gets no's, he gets more and more excited because he knows he's getting close to that yes. So when he gets to that sixth no, seventh no, eighth no, like he's getting excited because he knows about every nine no's, I'm going to get a yes. He knows he's getting closer. Like that is mentally strong. How many salespeople do you know that have that kind of mentality? Not many. And the ones you do know, they're really great salespeople. So you have to be mentally strong. It is a sales position. The other thing I want to clarify is you have to embrace this role. If you're a salesperson, you have to embrace this role. This is helping you. This makes you better at your job. This allows you to focus. A lot of times I see sales, and when they get an inside salesperson, they're upset. They view it as you're stealing my sales. You're stealing part of my commission. These are calls that would have closed anyways. And that's not the truth. Does that happen sometimes? Yeah, sometimes that happens, sure. But in the bigger picture, they are getting you additional sales while you're out working with customers, still getting sales in the home. And so, really, when you look at this from the bigger picture, it's getting you more sales and thus more commission as well. So, usually, when we roll out an inside salesperson with a company, a lot of times sales will have a negative view in the beginning, but by month 3, 4, 5, they realize this is actually in my best interest. The only ones that are really like stuck in the mud about it are usually the poor salespeople, the people that can't execute a one-trip close, the people that can't close in the home. They don't know how to present, they don't know how to ask for the sale. Those are the people that get stuck and don't like the inside sales role. Um, but usually by month three, four, most salespeople figure out that this is benefiting me. And in fact, your elite salespeople, they know this. So I'll give you one example. I used to coach, when I coached automotive, I coached Toyota store, and they had one of the best Toyota salespeople in the country. Like he wasn't the number one, but he's definitely in the top 10, probably the top five, right? And so, for perspective, at that time, a good car salesperson would sell about 20 cars. Like that would be considered really good or great, right? And he was doing 40, 50, something like that every month, right? So he moved and he was really good with working with people, right? He could execute that sales process really well. And he realized that. He realized I'm good with people. I'm really good at executing a sales process. I close when they're in the store here, but he didn't do any follow up, none whatsoever. Like if they did not close on that trip to the store, they never got any follow up whatsoever. But eventually, he started to realize, like, man, there's probably some opportunities here. Is there a way that I could capture those customers while still working my customers that show up at the store? And so he presented this idea to his general manager. He said, what could I get an assistant? Could I hire an assistant? Like this assistant, their job would be when I don't sell, they would follow up with all of my unsold customers to see if we could get them back into the store or move them forward, right? And his thought was, I could keep working with customers in person while this person is capturing me sales on the backside. And the agreement they came to, the GM said, "Yeah, that sounds like a fantastic idea. Let's hire you an assistant." But the agreement they came up with was the store would cover part of the salary, but then a portion of the salesperson's commission would also pay this assistant. Essentially, without knowing it, they created the inside sales role. And the salesperson came up with this all on his own because he was looking at how do I maximize my time? How do I get the most amount of sales with the least amount of effort? And he figured out inside sales all on his own. So inside sales, this is fantastic. I'm excited for you guys. Now to answer your question, like starting out, there are 5 areas that I focus on, right? When I work with a new inside salesperson or a company that's starting an inside salesperson, there's a lot of classes you can go to, and they're fantastic classes that take you through everything inside sales. But really, when you boil it down, I think there's 5 key areas that you have to have in place. And if you have these 5 key areas in place, like you'll figure the rest out. It's like the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of your results are going to come from these 5 things. The other 20% will come from everything else here. So the first thing, have a clear transition. Know when is it your lead, when is it the salesperson's lead. Know when that lead transitions to you. Because here's what I don't want you to do. I don't want you wasting time. This is a role that really hinges on how many contact attempts you can make. I want you to make the phones ring. I want you texting. I want you emailing. I want you calling. I want you doing all those. I do not want you reaching out to the salespeople and like, was this one yours? This one mine? I'm waiting to hear back on this guy. He's on a call right now. I don't want any of that happening. So I want a very clear definition, a very clear rule of when this lead goes from the salesperson to the inside salesperson. And spoiler alert, probably going to be much sooner than most of you think. I would say next day, probably. It should go right there because I want my salespeople back in the field. And I want my inside salesperson following up. So have a clear transition. Number 2, call structure. Have a structure for your call. Like, what does that conversation look like? And probably to get more specific, like have a reason, have a good reason that you're calling the customer. When I started sales, I mentioned I did my own follow-up. And I very early in my sales career, I remember I sat down, I was doing my follow-up, and my manager walked by. And my manager, he was a used car salesman. Like that's what he was. He's a great guy. I learned a lot from him. But like whatever you're picturing in your head when I say used car Subaru salesman, like that's him, right? He had the slick back hair, the Fu Manchu, everything. But he sat down and he said, God, you suck at follow up. I was like, oh my God, what do you mean I suck at follow up? And he said, he's like, you don't have a reason. There's no customer reason that you're following up with these customers. And you're right. He was right. If you'd have listened to my calls, most of my follow-up calls sounded something like, hey, this is Chris, just following up. Or, hey, this is Chris, wanted to see if we could get you in for a second test drive. They were all my reasons. They were all salesy reasons. None of this was a benefit to the customer. And so I'm lumped into the same category as cold calling, right? Like SiriusXM calling you about starting up a plan. That's where I got lumped. What I needed to do is I needed to think of a reason, a customer reason that I was calling, something that's going to benefit them. And so have a call structure, specifically have a reason you're calling them. Number three, have a defined goal. Know what success looks like. So I said an inside salesperson, 10% of unsold revenue, right? So know what calls you're going to be following up and where are those currently closing and what would 10% of unsold sales look like? Define what the success looks like. Number four, track your actions. Have a process to track your actions, your contact attempts, your sold, the revenue, etc. The contact attempts, that's huge. That's probably the biggest one because that's the thing you have control over. You don't have control over revenue. That's an end result. What you do have control over, though, is your contact attempts. And that's where I see a lot of inside salespeople. They take too much time in between calls. They're not making enough calls. But those ones that are really effective, they know how many calls they need to make every day, and they make sure that happens. That's the one thing they can control. In fact, I just had an inside salesperson I'm coaching. We had onboarded him, got him started. He's been up and running a couple months now. And as we were meeting, I noticed he wasn't hitting his daily contact attempt goal. He was falling short every day. And he had a $50,000 goal by the end of the month. And sure enough, he messaged me because I told him, message me end of the month. I want to know if you hit it or not, right? He missed it by $700. $700. In fact, I joked with him that he should start going around the office and somebody's buying a water heater today just to hit that goal, right? But before I didn't even have to say it because we'd been talking about it so much. He knew exactly what I was going to say. And he told me, he said, yeah, I think if I would have hit my contact attempts for every day, I definitely would have got that 700. And he's right. He would have. That's the one thing he's got control over. So track those actions. Know if you're hitting those contact attempts every single day. And the fifth thing is have a game plan. Put together a game plan. And so usually when I'm onboarding an inside salesperson, we go through all of this stuff. And now at this point, we have enough data that we can see based on their performance, we're able to figure out what their closing percentage is and what their average sale is. And based off of that, we can create a game plan of contact attempts per day. And that contact attempts is going to equal revenue. It's just a math problem. That's what it is. And so we create that game plan. And then now you've got the game plan. Go work the game plan. So I've onboarded many inside salespeople. When I walk them through these 5 components, have a clear transition, call structure, have a defined goal, track your actions, and have a game plan. When I walk them through those 5 components, they are self-sustaining. They're 80% of the way there. They're still learning. There's still things to fill in, but they got the meat of it. And they're very effective in the role. So focus on these or schedule an onboarding with me. I will walk with you step by step to get this accomplished so that you're self-sustaining in the field. So that's today's question of the day. Follow, give a rating. We're on major streaming platforms. If you have a question, reach out to me either on social media or email. Both are going to be listed in the show description. Then we can get it answered for you. If you're an X-Star member, schedule a call with me. Let's address your questions one-on-one. Let's get specific to your situation. I'm Coach Chris. We will see you tomorrow.